Okay, let's move into the second exercise, which is where we're going to do an audit of a few of these RPC style APIs. And we're going to begin with the PayPal SOAP API. All right, so you need a browser, you need a new tab. And again, whether you want to follow through all these exercises with me, great. I don't mind at all. You want to just sit back and watch, it's entirely up to you, right? My recommendation is always do the hands-on portion yourself on your own. I find that it works best if you do it, but not everybody learns the same way. So it's entirely up to you. And what we're going to do is we're going to navigate to PayPal. So paypal.com. And we're pretending we're developers. So we're going to select developer. We're going to go to the developer portal. And we're going to go under APIs and SDKs. A soft SDK stands for Software Developers Kit. And SDK is nothing else but a wrapper into an API. It helps, it makes it a lot simpler for somebody who's targeting to consume an API using a particular language. It makes it a lot simpler to consume that API. If I wanted to consume the API in JavaScript, I will be using the JavaScript API, right? Because it's going to make my life a lot simpler. Think of it as being a wrapper that targets a specific programming language. The other thing I would like you to pay attention to is you have RESTful APIs, you have name value pair. This is very old school, by the way. You have the SOAP, which is also old school APIs. Then you have the GraphQL APIs. So there's not many companies that can afford to provide you with this bandwidth of different APIs, right? You have PayPal provide you with RESTful, provide you with SOAP, provide you with GraphQL, the latest and greatest, right? So not many companies can do that, right? But PayPal is that big. It's been around forever. So that's why they have the ability to provide you with this type of different types of APIs, right? Same exact API in different form. There, that's what I was looking for. On our end, for our exercise, we're interested in this MVP SOAP APIs. And we're interested in the get started right here. And we're interested in the SOAP basics. And if I scroll down, the only thing you need from the perspective of a user, it's this WSDL. It's right here. That's why it's prominent. It is prominent. It tells you, okay, well, here's the WSDL. Do you want to hook up to the sandbox where you can build your code and test it? Or would you like to hook up to production? It doesn't really matter in our case which one we're going to use. We're going to use the sandbox because we can. We can use production. We can too. We're not going to implement anything. So I'm going to select it. This very long document, look at this. This very long document contains everything you need to know with respect to the PayPal API. Over the years, again, from the user's perspective, this is unreadable, right? Nobody nowadays reads this document. They just get this document and using tools, they're able to parse it and make sense of it. Or maybe using documentation. If I go back to the previous slide, to the previous tab, if I look at the SOAP operations, here's all the different operations, right? Do reauthorization. Do we have the authorization somewhere here? It should be somewhere here. All of these are the different operations. All of these. Yeah, here it is. Do authorization. All right. All of these operations contains the corresponding input and outputs. And if I select one of these, I'm going to get to see the inputs. I'm going to get to see the corresponding outputs, right? And so on. So all of these, all of the SOAP APIs require extensive documentation. All of them, bar none. All of these operations, you can find them in here too, right? Again, over the years, as I was mentioning earlier on, I became more familiar. I understand that the very first thing that takes place are the different types. And as soon as you start defining the types, you're going to start defining messages and you're going to start defining operations, right? And if I go and I select, if I search WSDL colon operation, here it is. Here's the different operations, and these operations now associate with the different messages, and the different messages associate with the different types you have defined. And that's how you're able to start making sense of everything that you see right here. It's not easy. It's not easy. I'm telling you that. At least it's not human readable. Let's put it this way. So nobody's using this. So what do? Well, we use tools like SOAP UI. That's what we do. So let me copy the link. I'm just going to grab the link up until and including the WSDL. Copy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open another tool called SOAP UI. See, this is a third-party tool. Let me bring it on the right side. Here it is. So this is a third-party tool. There we go. And we can go ahead and create a new SOAP project. And the only thing we need is to paste the URL we just copied. You can update it if you want to, the project name, but that project name seems very reasonable to me. And we can click OK. I'm accepting all the others as default. Now watch. It read the WSDL. It downloaded that WSDL, that long document. It parsed it and is able now to provide to me all the different operations. Here it is. Remember the do authorization? Here it is. Right now I can see all the different operations that are provided. And I can go ahead and expand this, and I can select one of these test requests that it was created automatically for me. So if I select it, now I can see what are the inputs. So the SOAP format, or the SOAP protocol, is pretty much a data format that encapsulates, it's an XML format that encapsulates everything inside an envelope. That's SOAP. This is SOAP. Everything within the header is defined in the WSDL. The body is SOAP. Everything within the body is defined within the WSDL. These definitions within the WSDL are specific to this API. So the only thing I know with certainty across different SOAP APIs is that I'm going to have this SOAP env envelope, I'm going to have this SOAP env header, and I'm going to have this SOAP env body, and potentially I may have attachments too. But that's the only thing I'm certain of. I'm not certain about anything else. The rest are specific to this API. And one of the things that I realize is that under the headers, I have my credentials. So if I'm looking at a SOAP API, and I would like to identify where the authorization, the credentials are, authentication authorization information are, then I will have to go and check the WSDL or check the documentation that associates the WSDL. Otherwise, I wouldn't know. There's nothing standardized about it, guys. This is what PayPal decided to do. And tools like this also give me the ability to send requests. Again, it's one thing I have the SOAP encoded request body, and I have another. I need something else now to send the actual request. And this, of course, makes use of HTTP, right? So HTTP, it's not very far from anything when you're dealing with modern APIs. So yes, I need to encode my request one way. Then I need to send this request to the server. And generally speaking, that's done using the HTTP protocol. In 99.9% of all SOAP APIs that I've seen, actually all the SOAP APIs that I've seen, I'm using 99.9 because I don't know what a specific SOAP implementation will look like. They make use of the post HTTP method, and they send all the stuff that you see right here in the request body. Everything you see right here is sent in the request body. The whole thing in the request body. And that's how things are communicated. And if I click send, of course I'm going to be getting errors. Here it is, 400 bad requests, because I have yet to provide appropriate values, right? You only see question marks. I will have to replace those question marks with appropriate values before PayPal is able to give me back something that is reasonable. I'm going to take you now to Salesforce for a second, and I have a link for that. It's also in your manual. I'm looking at the Salesforce SOAP APIs. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking at. And I'm going to take you to the reference. And I'm going to expand the core calls. I can expand the describe calls. There's tons of information here. Look at them. All of these are specific to Salesforce. You don't see any delta, any union, any intersection between what we were looking at PayPal and what we see in Salesforce. So this is a altogether different API. So if I know PayPal, doesn't mean I know Salesforce. I don't know where I can pass credentials in Salesforce. I will have to go and inspect yet again the Salesforce WSDL. I may have to go and check the Salesforce documentation in order to figure out how I can pass credentials in this case. So extensive documentation, you know one SOAP API doesn't mean you can assume anything about the next, which is a big problem for SOAP APIs. Big problem. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to inspect the XML RPC and JSON RPC, and then we're going to go to Slack. So let's look at XML RPC. XML RPC, here it is. You have a link inside your manual as well. And why did I tell you earlier on that it's still in use, even though it was first defined in 98? Because I saw this. Starting in 2019, we have a new implementation of XML RPC in JavaScript. So somebody's using it. Somebody's using it. And if I go under the specification, which is what I'm interested in, and again, I wasn't able to track down a freely available API that I can share with you, a production grade API. So we have to suffice by looking at the specification. And this specification tells you the following. This is what a request looks like. It's an HTTP request. It's always a post. The path depends upon who created that API, right? They will specify the path. And in this case, I see the method call. This is part of the spec. I see the method name. This is part of the spec. The actual name is the one that is created by the user. And again, if you look at this, very code-like, and it even makes use of the dot notation to indicate a domain of some sort. And then you encode the parameters under the params tags. And you pass either position or position dependent or position independent parameters. You can do either or. If I scroll down, you will see that it comes with its own typing system. I4 indicates an integer, 4-byte integer, boolean, a string, a double, datetime, base64 type, struct for structures to create objects, arrays for collections, and so on. And then the response, look at the response. Here's the response. 200. Here's the method response. Here's the parameters. Here's the response data. And if I scroll down, now you see an example where something went wrong. Here's an error. The HTTP status code is still 200. Method response, fault. So I will have to check the response body, see the fault, and then check what codes, what is the message, and so on. So using RPC style of APIs requires defining your own error handling. You cannot depend upon the existing, what already exists, for example, in the HTTP protocol, right? Because I know 200 means success. I can use 400, which means client error. I can use 500, which means server. I don't do that with this RPC style, which means I have to reinvent the wheel. Pretty much every time I build a new API, I have to reinvent that wheel, unless I choose to standardize it, but then you standardize it only for your organization. If you go and you look at another RPC from a different organization, they have their own stuff. It's not standardized. That creates all kinds of difficulties. These are problematic issues with all SOAP, with all RPC APIs, not SOAP, with all RPC APIs. JSON RPC, very similar. Very quickly, we're going to go to JSON RPC. And again, I'm interested in the spec 2.0. And I'm interested in showing you what those requests look like. I believe it's on section 7. Here's some of the examples. Again, it's a post method. I'm telling you now ahead of time. It's a post method. The request body looks like this. The response looks like that. Again, you have the method. Method is part of the spec. Here's the name that you give the method. Here's the parameters. It could be position or position independent. Up to you. And if you have errors, well, this is what they're going to look like, which means you're defining your own error handling yet again. All RPCs are the same. They create all kind of different difficulties. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to Slack, and for that I need to go to my cheat sheet and click the link. Here it is. Here's the Slack RPC API. This is a modern API. It doesn't exist for more than a few years, guys. Slack has been around for what? A decade? Maybe less? And they have an API and they choose to create something that is non-standard? They create their own thing? I don't know. It looks a bit off. They give the freedom, right? They give the developers of Slack the freedom to create whatever they want, right? If I go to the HTTP methods, now I'm going to get to see what the methods look like, and they use still dot notation. And we only need to select one of these, right? One of these. I don't know, let's find something with conversations. Create. Again, this is how you create channels pretty much in Slack, if you know if you're familiar with Slack. So if I select admin conversations create, it's a post. It's always a post. This is what it looks like. They also come with their own SDKs, right? Look, they have SDKs for JavaScript, Python, Java, and so on. If you select, I don't know, JavaScript, right? They're going to tell you exactly what you need to invoke. And they have documentation here for all that, by the way, which makes it a little better, right? But what if you use a language that is not supported here? What are you going to do? Well, you're going to have to go back doing HTTP requests. So here it is. This is the method that main conversations create. I see the different arguments. And if I scroll down, I see some more information. And if I keep scrolling down, I'm not even halfway through, right? I'm not even halfway through. And I'm seeing an example response, and I'm seeing the errors. Look, a little more than half of the documentation is dedicated to the errors. Again, they create their own error handling. Again, Slack has to provide now extensive documentation explaining that. I'm not saying RPCs are bad. I'm saying we could do a bit better. Yes, they give the freedom that developers need to create whatever the heck they want at a cost. What's the cost? Adoption. Because now users have to relearn something. They cannot assume anything. And that's not the case when you're dealing with RESTful, when you're dealing with GraphQL. gRPC is very similar to this. It's not that different. You still have to learn stuff anew. I think we were quite exhaustive with the RPC style APIs. And with this, my good people, we concluded this fairly long section. Talk to you to the next.